Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Thunderstock Show, a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. Today, our special guest is Anna B. Yang. Anna is part of a three-person executive team. Excuse me. Anna spent the first 15 years of her career at a fintech company, including 4 years in the executive management team. But in 2021, she chose to pursue content marketing and journalism, and now she runs a successful freelance writing business. Anna, thank you so much for joining. How are you doing today?
I am cold because it is that time of year in Chicago, but otherwise I'm doing really well.
So how did you know it was the time to exit your executive management position and start going on your own? It's kind of a scary step.
It was a scary step, and at the time that I quit, I did not have another job lined up. Um, I got an offer like 2 days later, but at the time I was, did not exactly know what was going to happen next. Um, I know this is probably going to sound cliche at this point, but it was really the pandemic that kind of made me rethink what I was doing and what I wanted to do. And so I think it was in about July of 2020 that I thought I'm going to do something different. I don't want to do this anymore. And started doing some freelance writing on the side, so alongside my tech job. And by about October, I started applying. And so felt like I had built up enough of a portfolio at that point. So I started applying to content marketing agencies and other kind of writing related field or companies. And but by January, I'd been interviewing a lot and I just thought, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to wait for an offer. And I quit. And then worked for content marketing agencies for about 18 months and then went out on my own. And now I run my own business.
What has been the biggest challenge from working for somebody else to running your own business?
Honestly, it hasn't been a challenge, and that sounds weird to say, but because I worked for I've always worked for small companies, and I was on an executive team, I got to see like the ins and outs of running a business, like looking at, financials and budgeting and kind of that back end operation stuff that really trips people up sometimes. And so probably the hardest thing was just uh, finding clients. But
Mm,
even that, I did a lot of work to build up my network before I went out on my own, not even knowing that I was going to go out on my own. That was not the original plan.
right.
I thought that I was going to keep working for employers. Um, but I just kind of done a lot of work to build up a network. So at the time that I decided, all right, now I'm going to do my own thing, it wasn't too long before I had kind of a full pipeline of potential clients. So that's probably not the answer you wanted. You said what are the challenges, but that's been my career journey.
No, that's the type of answer. The true answer is the one I wanted. So it's refreshing to hear. And I also think it makes a lot of sense that it wouldn't have been as rocky of a transition if you hadn't had the experience in executive management and being able to see what it's like to own and operate a business. I've seen a lot of people get tripped up. They're great at what they do, the service they provide, but when it comes to the other, I would say intangible parts of running a business to them, they think, oh, my job is just to create content and my job is just to create art, but your job is also to manage the finances and to do the sales and business development and all the other things. So I
Yeah,
love to hear that.
you're really like a one person little bit of everything, right? Your accounting and your legal and your sales and your marketing. And so like exactly like you said, some people are really good at the thing they do and what they can deliver, but running a business is equally part of that role.
Hmm.
And I think I was just fortunate that my past experience gave me those experiences so that that wasn't a holdup for me.
What are a few key milestones or achievements in your career journey that gave you the confidence to tackle running your own business?
You know, um, I stayed that tech company that I worked for, but like you said in the intro, I was there for 15 years. And one thing that happened really early was I was 6 months into the role and I was actually about to quit the company because I was I was a newly married and had to leave and move to another state to work for this job.
Hmm.
And that wasn't working. I like wanted to go back to where I was from. And the company said, we trust your work so much, even though you've only been here for 6 months, we're going to let you work remotely. And that was back in 2006. That was
That's
way
way ahead
before,
of the time.
way before. And so, and then I think within a year of starting the job, I was promoted and I kind of kept getting promoted and was given more responsibility. So those were some of the things that I'm like, all right, I'm good at what I do. And the people I was working for at the time trust me to do this work. Um, so that was kind of one thing, is just I'd had, external validation that I'm good at what I do. Um, I think when I did start and went out on my own, I told my husband, I'm going to try this for 6 months. And if I can't make this work, I'm going to go back. I will find a job. And so within about 2 months, I'd replaced my salary at the agency that I just left.
Wow.
And so that to me was also validation that the work I do is good and clients are going to continue to come to me. So that was another milestone. It's just like, all right, now I've covered what I used to earn. I can keep going. So I think those are two things that really stick out in my mind, is like, you can do this, you can run your own business.
That's incredible. I love to hear that. So often when I talk to people, it's it sometimes takes 3 to 4 years. Like I had talked to a person recently before he matched what he was making working as a full-time employee, a small business owner. But for you to do that in 2 months is pretty incredible, and love to hear that. What what are some of the things outside of work that get you to be grounded and help you to stay focused and committed to work? Like what are some of the things that keep you grounded?
I'm a very habit driven person. And so routine keeps me grounded. I
Mm,
do a lot of personal writing outside of client writing, and to some extent it's part of my business. I have a Substack and I have a newsletter, but I think of those as more personal projects, right? Like those are just things I enjoy doing, even though they are kind of wrapped into the business. And so I'm able to kind of maintain focus by kind of blocking off and scheduling those things. And that's, probably makes me sound very controlling, but kind of by working those and making sure I make time for those things in my day, it keeps me balanced between work and these other things I do that are not client work. Because I'm like, I want to make time for both. I want to make sure I can be creatively fulfilled in addition to client work, which is creative also, but it's what they want rather than what I want. Um, and so I think making sure that I have time for those other things in my day and my week kind of keeps me motivated to continue doing what I'm doing.
yeah, I find so often people are great at starting something, they chase novelty, and it's easy to stop doing something, but the magic is in persistence, and oftentimes that's just discipline and sticking to a routine. So,
I'm very motivated by streaks. Like I've
mm,
got a long streak going on Wordle and a long streak going in Duolingo and a lot of other things. So that just is kind of motivating for me. And I use an app for other streaks. And so like looking at that number and seeing the number keep creep up, that kind of is just, I like that. I like feeling like I've got a thing going and I want to keep it going. So
are you
that's
familiar with Jerry Seinfeld?
I am, but I wasn't a big watcher of the show, but I do know Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge watcher of the show either. Nothing against it, just different timing. But one of the things that he shared in his professional development, I found interesting, kind of like the streaks, is he committed a period of time each day that he had to write. He
Yeah.
had two choices: you either write or you do nothing. That's the only thing you can do in this space. And he would mark on a calendar um, every consecutive day. And you know, I think that that commitment is kind of what you're speaking to with creating streaks and routines to enhance your career and just hone your skills.
Yeah, because at some point, it's maybe a little hard to get started, but at some point you get to like a 21-day streak or something like that. And now you're like, oh, I don't want to break it. And so
Mm,
even if you really don't want to do the thing that day, you do it because you don't want to go back to zero. And
right.
so I think, I've done that a lot with writing, like you said, like Jerry Seinfeld, and just a lot of other kind of little habits that I have. And so that's what
So
keeps me going.
have you always been into writing? Like, is that what you went to college for? Is that what you knew you wanted to be when you grew up when you were younger?
I did go to college for that. I was an English major. I did not know that that was what I was going to do. At the time that I graduated from college, writing, not that the internet didn't exist, but it didn't exist in the way at all, anything like
Sure.
it.
Absolutely.
Nothing like it did today. And so to make money as a writer, it seemed like I had two choices. I could either write a book or work for a newspaper or an online version of a newspaper, neither of which seemed to pay very well. And so right out of college, I went into tech. And I always did writing on the side. Like I had a personal blog and things like that, but I truly did not know until I started thinking about a career change. I did not know that people like paid writers. I really didn't. I didn't know that content marketing was a thing. Like it didn't really, even though I read blogs all the time, including like company blogs and things like that, um, I didn't realize that I could make a career out of it. And I definitely did not realize that I could run a business on that. And so that was just a surprise, and I'm thrilled that I get paid to write. Um, but no, it was not at all what I set out to do with my life.
So that's interesting going back to the college experience of there were only, newspapers or becoming a novelist or an author. I was also an English major, dual major with that in philosophy. And at the time I was like, oh, I'm going to be a teacher. That's how I use my English degree. And then halfway through school, it's like, I do not want to be a teacher. So I was kind of in limbo. And what I found out was the way that schools, at least when I was in school, looked at marketing was radio, television, newspaper, magazines, events. It was very traditional. Like digital marketing didn't exist when I was in school. That wasn't a thing.
Yeah, and
It
now
wasn't a thing.
it wasn't a
And
thing. Yeah.
the amount of classmates that I graduated with, now some have become true writers, novelists, some, education, teaching, that's fine, like the traditional college paths. But boy, more often than not, they found their way into digital marketing in some shape or form. And it's been one of those things where, like you said back in 2006 when you had that remote job, I think it's been one of the greatest things for the economy for people like us that, love to write, love to put our thoughts out on the internet, but don't necessarily love to fit into like a traditional box.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting in addition to client work that I do, which has been great. There's so many more platforms for writers now. There's things like Substack, there's things like, there's different websites. You can have a newsletter and all these other ways for writers to make money that also didn't exist however many years ago. You couldn't necessarily be independent and get your voice out there, and find your people and the people who are interested in what you had to say. They're kind of, gatekeepers and traditional publishers and all these or traditional publications. And so I think, yeah, like you said, that's been just a great thing for people who are writing or creative or anything in that field.
So you have some experience in another quote unquote non-traditional, going back to the college degrees. Like fintech wasn't really a thing. When you were in finance or economics or business type accounting, whatever major, it wasn't really fintech on the table as like a solution. So tell us a little bit about your experience and how your blend of writing and content and fintech, how that sort of melded together.
So when I started in high school, I worked at a community bank. I was a teller. In college, I worked at the same bank and I got into loan operations and coming and helping the loan officers process loans. And I used a software to make that happen, to keep track of the loans and kind of a lot of the stuff that happens after the loan is closed and kind of ongoing taking care of it. So when I got done with college, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? Um, I applied for that at that company that provided that software. And they hired me, and that was the job I had for 15 years. So I spent that ton of time, working with banks, and teaching them how to do things within the software. So I became incredibly knowledgeable in banking and kind of a lot of related things. It was not called financial technology back then, even though that's what it was. That was kind of a term that
Hmm.
emerged much later. Um, and when I started writing as a business, like as my own business, that was a thing that made me really unique. There are not a lot of writers who understand financial technology. It is very regulated. A lot of the type of technology or the topics that I write about. It is very heavy in industry jargon,
Mm,
and you have the audience knows if you don't know what you're talking about. Like
sure.
especially because I do mostly business to B2B, business to business, and so I'm writing to work decision makers and people who are looking to purchase this type of technology, and so that helped my business immensely because there just are not a lot of financial technology writers. And I say, not only do I have a portfolio of work that shows that I can do this, but I actually did this. I actually worked in this field for a long time.
Hmm.
But just again, kind of by accident, that it started at a bank way back, in high school.
It's something that's I find always interesting that I love the quote, hard work's never wasted. So even those high school jobs that you might not have thought of, like you probably didn't go to college and say, I'm gonna, work in banking, but you want to be a writer and then you created your own path, which you could still draw from that experience. It's pretty cool. I
You
don't know.
want to hear a funny story about
I
that?
do. I do love hearing funny stories.
Okay, well, or an interesting story. I was going to be a finance major. I liked banking. I thought it was interesting. I didn't think writing was a career, so I didn't think it was at least not a career I could make money
Hmm.
in. So I thought I'm going to go into banking. I like banking. It's interesting. I'll do this. So I was all set to be a finance major. I came back to my, after my first semester, came back for break and just chatted with the bank president where I'd been working um, for years. And I proudly told him I'm going to be a finance major. And he said to me, don't be a finance major, be an English major and show any future employer that you can write and you can speak. He's like, we can teach you anything you want to know. You don't need to go to school for that.
Mm,
Go get a liberal arts degree. And that's what I did.
interesting.
I went back, I changed majors. And he was right. I mean, I stayed working at the bank throughout college and they did teach me, like a lot of the stuff about like banking specifically. You don't learn that in college.
No, no, no.
You learn about it on the job.
You're lucky if
You
you had
don't-
an internship to learn that.
Right. Yeah. Like people who work at Goldman Sachs and stuff, they don't learn banking regulations in college. They learn it.
They learn
When,
Excel. They learn other things besides Excel, but they all of it's they learn,
yeah.
how to do math and
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. You learn the
maybe
principles.
PowerPoint.
Learn the principles, but you don't
Yeah.
learn how it works in real life.
Yeah.
And so that was incredibly good advice that just do the thing you love anyway. And the thing that actually will serve you, no matter what job you go into, writing is going to serve you. And that was true. Like even before I did my own thing, I relied on my writing skills heavily. So, um, yeah, kind of came full circle there though.
Well, that was sounds like great advice. It's very cool. Also, as a college student, you got to speak with the president of the bank that you're at. That just shows a lot of
Well, I mean, it was a very small bank. I mean, it
sure.
was, 30 employees or something like that. So,
It's still,
um,
yeah. I mean, it's still something that when I got out in my career and I had people that were working in marketing agencies for years and years, still never talked to the C-suite of the clients. You know, it's just something that gives you a unique perspective, I'm sure. And I love the advice. What I tell people is if you can learn and you can communicate what you've learned coherently, whether that's by writing or by speaking, or sometimes it can be through video or photography, but let's just say writing and speaking primarily. You can do a lot of things. You can make that
yeah,
persuasive. You can make it informative. You can make it, whatever it is. But a lot of people that I've found that have the most success in entrepreneurship have generalist skills where they can, have empathy and can connect with people, can communicate, and then they can apply their experience in specific niches to, leverage those generalist skills. Whereas if you only have that specific skill of, learning how to be a doctor, right? It's
right,
great, but like doctors don't learn how to run a business when they're in medical school.
right.
So what is something that, you know, you'd like to set as a challenge for 2025 or a goal? And if you think you hit that one goal, it would make the year a major success. It could be personal, business, what have you.
It has been a goal of mine for a ridiculous number of years to focus on exercise and health. And I am really good at taking walks in warm weather, and I am terrible at taking walks and staying active in cold weather. And I live in a suburb of Chicago, so
Mm.
there are several months of cold weather. Um, I kind of have this perpetual problem where I fall out of the routine. And like I mentioned, I'm a very routine driven
You're a streak
person,
person.
and I'm a street person. And so um, my goal for this year is to just maintain that consistency throughout the year and not only in the summer when it's nice out and I can go out for walks. So I have a walking pad in my office. It's actually directly next to my desk. So I have to stare at it every single time when I come into my office and using my streaks. And I swear I'm going to walk on that thing maybe every day or almost every day if I
Mm.
can.
Yeah, step counting is a huge thing. I'm like you, where last year at quarter three, quarter four, probably, I got into like cycling, which is an outdoor thing. And, I have health and fitness goals. It was at one time an aspiring professional athlete. Won't to go into that story. And it seems like the busier I get with my professional career, the easier it is to make excuses not to work out. So one trick that's helped me, and maybe it could be helpful to you, is my family. So my wife and other relatives are pretty big in like weightlifting, and I had to do that for sports and whatnot growing up. But the older I get, the more I'm like, this is not it. Like I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not trying to be one. But what I did do was I found a routine called high frequency, low volume. And the
Okay.
idea behind that is if you can do this every day, and as long as you pick, for example, a push exercise, a pull exercise, a leg exercise, you basically pick three movements out of like a pool of 20-ish that, can do total body. It takes you maybe 30 minutes, and I've been able to stick to that. Whereas other stuff, I've just been like, oh, I'll start, stop, I'll do good streak, then I'll put it on the shelf and just didn't get excited. For me, 30 minutes is like a good amount of time to exercise that I could commit to it. So high, it's called high frequency, low volume. I don't know
I
if
will
you're into
look
that,
into it.
but
Yeah, I
I'm
will take a look.
I have the same challenge as you, where I would love to go outside and do my cardio, but not in 0-degree weather.
No, definitely not. And the other thing I found was when I moved my walking pad near my desk, I actually have put a standing desk there and a laptop on top of it. And so I could like watch a podcast
Mm,
or I love listening to podcasts. And so I could, pull up a podcast on YouTube or even just kind of scroll LinkedIn, something like that. Um, but I found that that has helped tremendously in like saying like, all right, I can do this walking pad thing because it's not super interesting. I mean, when I go outside and walk, it's awesome. I go to a
hmm.
park and walk around, but walking on a walking pad in my office is not that interesting. And so like I found that having the standing desk has made a big difference.
That's awesome. I'm the similar way where walking on a treadmill, I know it's great for you, but I'm just like, it can't convince me to do it. So unless I have a phone call for client
Oh
work,
yeah.
sometimes people don't want to do Zoom, and so they want to do a phone call. In that case, I'll just like, all right, I'm gonna hop on the treadmill. Or if there's like a podcast or something, throw on the TV. That's been helpful too. Cool.
I did a call one time with a guy who was on his walking pad during the call, and props to him for being able to like do those two things at the same time. Um, and I didn't care. I just watched, on video, just like, all right, he's walking. That's fine.
Hmm. So speaking of walking down the path of your career, sort of on the same topic, but different. What at the end of the day, when you're ready to, twilight of age, let's say you're 80 years old and you've written most of what you have to write, you probably will still have more in you. But what are some things that you like your 80-year-old self to be able to look back on and say, this is, either advice like, oh, I wish I would have done this, hopefully not, or, encouragement. How would that conversation go with your future self?
I think my 80-year-old self would be proud of my middle-aged self for taking a chance on myself. You know, I always, being surrounded by banking my entire career up until I did a career pivot, I always thought self-employment was risky. I'd been told that. I saw that in the way that banks look at, potential loan customers and things like that. It's considered risky. And so I truly believed that that was not something that I could do or should do, not good for my family. I've got 3 kids. Um, so I never really thought about it until I went out and started my own business. And I am so glad that I took that chance on myself and knew somehow instinctively that I could do it.
Yeah, people don't look at it from a financial lending standpoint, but you're exactly right. When my wife and I went to, apply for a loan for our house, like I was self-employed, so they pretty much had to look at her income. And I'm
Yes.
like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not contributing to this endeavor right now. But I think was it 3 to 5 years of self-employed, you start to build a track record?
2 years of tax returns, which
2
could
years of
end up
tax returns
which could end up being 3 years, depending on when you
when you
started.
start. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually wrote an article for a banking magazine asking bankers. I mean, I can't change the banking industry, but just saying there are so many more self-employed people out there right now. And you could have a loan customer who loses their job and they have lost 100% of their income.
Mm,
That is a huge risk, that now they
huge
can't pay
risk.
now they can't pay their mortgage. If I lose a client, I lose a portion of my income. So
Hmm.
how is that more risky? I didn't lose my whole income. I only lost a portion of it.
I
But
totally agree.
I cannot change the industry. But yeah, like because I had worked in that industry for so long, it had been burned in my brain that self-employment is risky. And it's not. It's just a different type of risk. And so everybody has to choose their own risk.
Very well said. One of my favorite quotes is the biggest risk to take in life is to not take a risk. So it might be perceived as a risk, but it's calculated risk. And like you said, you diversify your streams of income through clients, and where one goes, typically a new one doesn't come far behind,
Yeah,
what in the door, out the door. So,
exactly.
well, awesome. Anna, do you have any um any requests for the audience in terms of, who should get in contact with you for your services, how to get in contact with you, anything like that?
Yeah, so I am very active on LinkedIn, Anna Burgess Yang. There's only one of me, so I'm pretty easy to find. Um, People can go to my website, annabyang.com, and there's information, if it's a potential client. And I've also got a subdomain, start.annabyang.com for people who are looking for resources about, getting started as a self-employed person, So I've got free guides, I've got a blog, all kinds of things, because that's what I really enjoy doing, in addition to my client work, is creating resources for other people like me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone also for listening. This has been a wonderful experience getting to know Anna and her journey. If you enjoyed the show, I don't run ads on it, don't plan to do so. Share it with a friend. It's the only way the show grows. And until next time, my only ask of you is to be well and keep prospering. Thanks so much, Anna. Appreciate you tremendously.